All right, Craig Snyder here with the Craig Snyder team in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Today we're talking about jet noise. You hear a lot about the jet noise here in Virginia Beach. Today we're going to talk about what it is and really how bad is it. All right, so first, what is jet noise? Well, the point of that is obviously there's jets. The reason that we have such an issue with jet noise is because of operations at Naval Air Station Oceana, as well as Naval Station Norfolk, with all of the naval aircraft going in and out of there. Now, I spent 24 years flying in the Navy. I am well familiar with flying in and around Norfolk and Fentress and Oceana. And so I would love to share with you some of the pros and cons and what it really means when we talk about jet noise here in the area. We're going to talk about where you're going to get it the worst, how you can avoid it, some ways you can protect yourself when you're buying and you're selling. And most importantly, we're going to talk about why this is even an issue, because it's not an issue at Chicago O'Hare or New York's JFK nearly as much. Why is it such an issue here? So let's talk about that starting right now. All right, so the most important thing about jet noise is that it is localized. It is around the airfields. It's around Naval Air Station Oceana. It's around Naval Air Landing Facility Fentress. It's around NOB Norfolk. It's also around Norfolk International Airport, but not nearly as much. And the rest of the area really doesn't have it. So what do we need to think about? First thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about a concept called AICUZ, A-I-C-U-Z, Air Installation Compatible Use Zone. Now, according to the City of Virginia Beach, AICUZ, Air Installation Compatible Use Zone, is a program to protect the health, safety, and welfare from noise and hazards through compatible development in the airport environment. What does that mean? It's just some fancy words that we're talking about building property and lifestyle so that we don't have so much noise impacting our daily lives. Because let's face it, the noise levels can be pretty loud. They can, if you got a baby sleeping, it can wake the baby up. You can be out cooking, flipping burgers and talking to a friend on the phone, and you can't even hear them on the other phone because the noise is so loud. And these are in some very expensive neighborhoods that are right here in Virginia Beach. So let's talk about where we're going to find these. First thing, we're going to look at this AICUZ map, the Air Installation Compatible Use Zone map, AICUZ. And we can see here, starting over in the city of Norfolk, this is Chambers Field, Naval Station Norfolk. Part of it is an airfield. There's a single runway right here. And so this single runway, you can see we have a noise map, and it shows the direction of where you're going to get the noise from Chambers Field. You'll see that some of it does go over Ocean View, some of it right here and into not quite Willoughby, right? That's a fact. Here at Naval Station Norfolk, you're mostly thinking E2s, CODs, and helicopters. They are certainly loud, maybe not as loud as what we're going to see down at Oceana and Fentress. Moving further southeast, you've got Norfolk International Airport. You're talking 737s. You're talking A320s. We're talking, Embraer 175s. Aircraft climbing out of Norfolk International Airport are going to fly a different profile. They're going to fly an NADP, Noise Abatement Departure Procedure profile. And it's either 1 or 2 based on noise abatement, noise sensitivities to the area. And typically at 1,000 feet on the climb out, that aircraft is going to actually reduce power and nose over to accelerate. So they're going to accelerate at a lower altitude at reduced power. If noise abatement is a problem, they're actually going to not accelerate. They're going to still reduce power at that point, but they're just going to keep climbing and then accelerate later. Those procedures minimize noise around commercial airports. And the airports are designed with high bypass turbofan. The airplanes are designed with high bypass turbofans, which are quieter than a turbojet or a low bypass turbofan. And so what we find, they're more efficient and they're a little bit quieter and they're more friendly to the neighbors. Now, on the other hand, we move down to Naval Air Station Oceana and Fentress, and we're flying jets, right? These are fighters. They are not here to be friendly to the neighbors. They are here to be mean to the enemy, right? So some aircraft may have higher bypass turbofans, but frequently they're lower bypass turbofans to the point they're almost turbojets, which are really, really loud. Like a EA-6B Prowler was a turbojet, incredibly loud. And then we have Hornets and Super Hornets where they are turbofans, but they are lower bypass than an airliner. And so they are louder. Those Super Hornets especially are very loud. And now we're going to see F-35s and things like that, which are pretty loud as well coming online. Now, if we look at this map, this is the AICUZ map, the AICUZ Air Installation Compatible Use Zone map. And we take a look, we can see here at NAS Oceana, we've got two parallel sets of runways. We've got 523 and 3214 going this way. And you can see that the blue is the higher noise area of the pattern. You can see this is departing runway 5, arriving 23, and vice versa. And then if they're doing the pattern, you're going right here in this left-hand turn, right over Lynn Haven Mall, right? All that noise right over Lynn Haven Mall. And if we were landing this way on 23, we're turning left, and it's mostly over the base. And then all of a sudden we're turning left, and guess what this is? This is Shadowlawn. We talked about that last week, right? So here's Shadowlawn. Here's some of that nice, here's Birdneck Point, and look at this. You're right on the arrival for runway 23. So there's certainly some noise here. This is that Kings Grant area. You can go looking around in Kings Grant and realize that it is a higher noise area. You can also start looking down here, down in towards the Red Mill area. You look down here. Guess what? Look at this. There's all sorts of noise in this area. You got Princess Anne Woods, you got Christopher Farms, all of these really nice neighborhoods with a really easy commute are in a noise area around Oceana. Now, the real one to be concerned about is actually down here at Fentress. The reason for that is that, as you can see, it's just a single runway. The pattern runs this way, or it runs that way, depending on which runway is in action. And you can see that there's not a whole lot of people living down here. There's a lot. It's a lot of space. Every lot has a lot of land. There's a lot of room. You don't have, your neighbors are not close by. What you have though is you have Fentress, and all the aircraft are flying overhead. And when we are flying, the reason we have so much noise at Fentress is this is the practice landing field. Prior to going to land aircraft on ships at sea, pilots prepare by practicing on land. They do this by flying a very strict prescribed pattern at the boat, and we mimic that at the field. Now, at the boat, your eyes lie to you. The reason for that, we can go into this at length if you like, but the ship is moving through the ocean, moving through the air mass, and as you start your turn and you look out, you can look out, if you're flying the airplane at the boat, it looks wrong. You look high because it's moving at 30 miles an hour away from you, and you're not landing on the boat where it is. You're landing where it's going to be. Unlike a normal runway where you land where it is, it doesn't move on the ground. The ship does. So what we do is when you're at the field and you're practicing, we turn the lights out so you can't cheat. What do I mean by that? You don't bounce during the daytime, usually. You only bounce at night. So you are getting ready to go to sea. You might have 6, 7, 8 times where you go around the pattern at Fentress at night and go, well, what happens at night? Imagine it's summertime. The sun doesn't set till it's really dark until after, 9, 10 p.m. before it's really, really dark. That when you get altitude, as you go up, it gets a little bit lighter because of the curvature of the earth and all that, right? So it's 9, 10 o'clock at night. And so frequently, those bounce patterns, that's not 3 in the afternoon. That's 11 o'clock at night. That's 1 o'clock in the morning. And you live underneath the pattern, and they're screaming overhead at 600 feet, sometimes 800, but it's supposed to be 600 feet. Holy cow. Do you know how loud that is? That is incredibly loud. Now, there was a time, I've heard stories where Fentress they were putting down a new runway. Somebody messed it up, contractor messed it up. They had to rip it out, put a new one in, and Fentress wasn't available for like a year. And people bought and sold houses during that year, and it was great, it was quiet, and they didn't realize how loud it was. And all of a sudden, the jets came back, and now they're mad as hell, right? Because they didn't know. Because it wasn't disclosed to them, or maybe it wasn't, they didn't understand it. They didn't see it. This is a real thing. Noise is a real thing, especially around Fentress. And if you're around in here, it's loud. Matter of fact, right here, there's a church. And on Sundays, you're not allowed to bounce between whatever it is, 6 and 8 p.m. because of Sunday night mass. Now, in the mornings, nobody flies during Sunday morning, right? There is no bouncing going on from Friday afternoon till Sunday evening. It's Sunday night, they're hitting it, right? Sunday through Thursday night, this thing is live and it's going. It also depends what's the carrier schedule? How many carriers are going out to sea? When are they going out? Do you have several going out at once? Well, guess what? The pattern is full all night long. And so this really can be a problem if you live down here. Well, it's not only a problem down there, but sometimes here, because although we don't like to bounce at Oceana, sometimes we have to. And if you have to, well, there's slightly different rules, but guess what? You're every 45 seconds to a minute, somebody's going directly over top of you. And they're up on the power. They got the gear down, the flaps out. They got all the drag hanging out there. So they're way up on the power with those low bypass turbofans making tons of noise. So something to consider that if you look at this map right here, you don't like noise. You probably don't want to live anywhere where you see the little colors here. Personally, I've been, like I said, I spent 24 years flying in the Navy. I've lived underneath a traffic pattern. I do not live in a noise zone here in Virginia Beach, because I find it frustrating, and I used to make the sound of freedom. So I offer that you should consider that before you buy anything in a noise zone. Now, what does that mean for you as a buyer or a seller? If you're buying a house, there's actually a law, ordinance, rule, whatever it is. This is required to be. It's a required disclosure. You have to have this disclosure document, and we're going to look at that right here. It's this one right here. And it's a disclosure for properties located in a locality in which military air installation is located. And if you're in Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Norfolk, you're going to click yes. Now, if you're up in Suffolk, you can actually click no. It is not a factor. It's not a factor up in Suffolk, and most of Portsmouth, believe it or not, but you still have to click yes. And then we're going to put in here what the noise zone is. Now, if it's a nominal area like the house where I live, you're going to see minus 65 decibels. And none. Accident potential zone, they map out if there's an accident potential zone area, right? But we're really concerned about the noise one up here. So this one right here is what you want. Many places in Virginia Beach, you're going to see 65 to 70 or 70 to 75. This is really rare over here, but you will see these. So this is something to look out for. And if you're a buyer and you see that, you got to know that they've disclosed to you this is a loud area, and you need this. Before you have to sign this, you'll notice that the seller and the buyer are both signing this. And that's a disclosure to you to make sure that you are protected as the buyer. Now, let's flip the script. You are now the seller. 3 years later, you got orders out of the area and you're the seller. Well, guess what? You now are obligated to disclose this. Make sure that you are thinking about this. You don't have to do anything other than sign this form. It's done. But sometimes people sell off market. They sell to a buddy. They go for sale by owner. Protect yourself. Make sure you disclose the ACUs properly. Otherwise, you're susceptible to lawsuit. Think if you were one of those folks who sold around Fentress. I told you the story, how for a year they weren't making any noise, and all of a sudden it gets all noisy, and they can say, I was never told, I was never disclosed, and somebody shows up and sues you for it because you didn't, and it's noisy. I don't know what the law says about what to do now, but it's probably up to a judge, and I wouldn't want to have anything left up to the interpretation of a judge. I'd rather just say, here's this piece of paper we both signed. It's good. So, and that's where somebody like me helps you out. So, all right. Okay, so there we are. We've talked about what the noise is, why we have it, where you're going to find it. We talked about Fentress, Oceana, and the difference between airliners and fighters in the Navy. We've talked about ACUS disclosures. The last thing to wrap it up with are the pros and the cons. Why might you live in a noise zone? Well, first and foremost, the noise is around the airport. If you work at the airport, it's close, and you've got a real easy commute. You're probably there. So a lot of my friends live in the noise zone because it's really close. Well, guess what? If you live there, you're probably near your friends too. So that's something to consider. Those are definite pros of living in the noise zone. The cons are, it's somewhat unpredictable if you're living there. It is loud and it interrupts your life. And could it cause hearing damage? I suppose it could. I don't really know, but I suppose that it certainly could. And the last thing on the cons is, shoot, it can be all night long. And that's something. I've had times where I was flying at 4 o'clock in the morning at the end of the night, and it had been going all night long. Can you imagine trying to sleep under that? Ugh, I do not. All right, so there we go. We just talked about jet noise. The sound of freedom. It's awesome. I love it. I don't want to live under it. But there you go. So now you're armed with the knowledge. If you have any questions, call me, Craig Snyder at the Craig Snyder Real Estate Team, CraigSnyderTeam.com, or at the number below. Talk soon. Bye.